right now. Cool. So we're gonna get started, and on the screen right now is the window problem training. Um, we're gonna start with wood windows. Yesterday we had gone through the vinyl stuff. And I think that you guys are pretty comfortable with the vinyl stuff. So we're gonna start on wood. Now, here's the thing with wood windows. To me, I look at them as like they're easier to learn about because the problems are mostly visual. So with vinyl, there's a lot of problems that are not visual, that are still, big time issues and whatnot. With wood, almost every problem is very visual. So, when you think about why wood doesn't work as a product as well as it used to, and why wood now doesn't work as a product, there's a couple of reasons here. So first of all, wood used to perform better because wood used to be a higher quality. So way back in the day, before the 1950s, you could cut down pretty much as many trees as you want. And so you could go to the oldest forest in whatever state you were in, and you could cut down, a bunch of trees, and you could process windows with 300-year-old wood. And it was a lot stronger than the newer stuff that you see today. But because of federal laws, you can't just go cut down whatever you want anymore. And so because of that, we have a situation where wood windows degrade a lot quicker because it's moist wood. It's newer wood. It's fresher wood. It's not, older, processed wood. And so wood windows rot a lot quicker. So in Massachusetts, for example, up until a couple of years ago, wood windows were the main source of even replacement windows. You had wood windows, but they would rot after about 10 years. Okay, they'd start rotting. And the reason why, where the age before was probably, closer to 20 or 30 years. The reason why they'd start rotting so early is because of the fact that they were made from this newer, less quality wood, and they weren't treated as well as some of the older windows. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that people don't want to maintenance their windows anymore. So back, 100 years ago, if you had wood windows, then after 20 years, you would strip them down, you'd put on another treatment, and then you'd repaint them, reglaze them, do the whole thing over. And most people were probably doing that themselves. Today, no one does it. They just let stuff rot. They let it go. That's the way that it goes. And so rotting starts to happen. The paint will start to peel first. Then you'll start to get mold on the windows, and then rotting will start to occur. The way that you can tell that wood is starting to rot is if it has a different consistency than other parts of the window. So if I'm looking at, let's say, a 2x4, and one part of that 2x4 was in a moist area that was primed for rot, then I would notice a difference in color definitely from the rest of the wood. I would also notice a difference in consistency. Like if I pressed down on it, then I could feel the difference. The rotting, the chipping would peel off. It would be easy for me to be able to tell that that part of the wood is rotting pretty severely. Now, when wood starts to rot, bugs, termites, things like that start to infest the wood. And so that will start to happen. In addition, wood is very malleable. So while it won't warp and bend, it will expand and contract. So for example, if you live in an older house, then you're probably familiar, like not even an older house. Right now, for example, in my house, my bathroom door, if you close it, then like completely, then it's a little bit tougher to open again. It gets sticky, right? It only happens in the summer because of the heat. So it starts to swell a little bit. In the wintertime, that swelling goes away and you start to, oh, 1 second. What's that? Oh. So it will start to expand and contract, and it will start to get sticky. So you'll see a lot of times in the summertime, wood windows will start to expand, and it'll become more difficult to open and close. Now, when you think about it, every window that's been created, every innovation that's been made in windows over the last, 200 years, 100 years, whatever, has been to eliminate wood. Back in the early 1900s, that process was used with metal. But then when people in the North and in the deep South realized that, well, metal is very conductive, it doesn't really make sense. I have a heater in the summertime and an air conditioner in the wintertime. When people started to realize that, think about those radiators, right? Where they heat up, and then that makes heat in the house. Imagine all of your windows being like that. So aluminum windows were great for places like San Francisco, where the weather never got under 55 degrees and never got above 85 degrees, but they were very bad for pretty much everywhere else. But every innovation has been made to eliminate wood windows from the market because of the low quality of the wood windows. Okay. So rotting is not good because of obvious reasons, right? You can see from these pictures, this is severe rotting. But the second picture, the bottom picture, that's actually a vinyl window. And that's a great example of how water can get through the vinyl window and into the surrounding area of the window, and then it can start to rot out. Okay. The top one is obviously rotted wood.
I'm gonna send you that back because Maurice is.
Is it? Okay, cool. There's nowhere else? You want to order from anywhere else?
We were looking at another place, but I'm not sure. But if I go to another place, you just want two sides there.
Yeah, order from Metro or something like that. Dude.
All right.
Yeah, order DoorDash, something like that. It's
All right.
you. Yeah, I'm not worried about the money. Hold on to it. Grab whatever.
All right,
Cool. All right. So, besides all the obvious issues with rot, it being gross, not being good for the house, stuff like that, it's also it doesn't look good, right? If you're going to buy a house and the first thing you notice is that all the windows are rotting pretty severely, then you're probably going to think twice about buying that house, right? Okay, now we talked about this, but pests and insects are a problem with wood windows because they start to deteriorate the wood windows, and rotting does not need to exist for bugs to get into the windows, but typically rotting will come first, and then the termites, like the ants, the beetles will start to infest the wood after that. Okay. Now, here's one of my favorite things to bring up. This is probably my favorite thing to bring up with wood windows because it's an inherent problem that exists that people can't get rid of. You can't put a treatment on a single pane window or a storm window. Okay. A single pane window is a window that has one piece of glass protecting the inside from the outside of the house. There's no argon gas. There's no energy efficiency. It's just one piece of glass. Glass and metal are the two least efficient products out there when it comes to keeping out energy. So if I have one piece of glass protecting the inside from the outside of my home, then I'm not going to have a very insulated house. Each window is going to act as a magnifying glass for the sun, for example. So any furniture, any flooring that I have inside the home will start to break down because of the sun blaring through the window, the single pane window. So there's no efficiency in a single pane window. In addition, I think about it like this, right? I live right near Williams Grove Speedway. Okay. Every Friday night, they didn't have it last night. I just realized that. Every Friday night, except for last night, during the spring, summer, and fall, you hear, and I have vinyl windows in my house. They're terrible. But if I had wood windows, if you talk to one of my neighbors with wood windows, the house rattles. All the windows rattle. The single pane glass rattles. You hear everything from the outside. Our windows are noise canceling to a degree, and so you're gonna have, it's like 50 to 75% noise reduction in your home from just getting the windows done with Renewal by Andersen windows. And so that's the benefit of our windows. Now, the storm windows, those are the metal casings that go over the wood windows. So if you look at this picture here, you'll see the metal over the wood. Okay. So the wood on the inside, that's a single pane glass. The metal is the storm window. So it's metal, and then it has a piece of glass inside of the metal. It does nothing. The metal conducts the cold and hot weather. Okay. So it heats up, it cools down, it heats up, it cools down. It conducts the cold and hot weather and transfers the energy into the home. The only thing that storm windows are good for is for blocking wind. There's no other effective benefit from storm windows. And so you'll have occasionally customers ask us if they can keep their storm windows. What I would tell a customer in a situation like that is, I guess technically you can, or you can get storm windows. Not from us, by the way. We don't sell storm windows. But there's no reason to. There's no reason for you to need to have storm windows in your home. Okay. And when it comes to our windows looking like the original wood windows, if a customer says something like, well, I like the look of my older wood windows, we can mimic the look of their older wood windows. We're the only non-wood window company that can do that. Okay, we talked about this a little bit. We're not gonna spend a lot of time on this, but paint peeling and glazing missing is an issue that starts before the rot. Should actually probably switch those up and put that before the rot. Well, there's a couple little deviations we can make there. So paint peeling will happen and then water gets underneath and then it starts to rot out the wood after that. Now, what glazing is the stuff that holds the wood and the glass together. I'm gonna go over that separately when we go over the pictures, so we don't need to worry too much about that right now. But that's what glazing is. Glazing is like when the glass meets the wood in a single pane window, it's what holds the glass into the window. It's like a cement-like material that comes off, and it's very expensive to fix. We'll go over that though. Now, I did mention this, and I know I'm breezing through this stuff too. It's, you know, in a video format. I'm going to ask if you have any questions here in a minute, but keep in mind that you can go back through this and watch it again and get the information again. One of the most common issues in wood windows is the fact that they're difficult to open and close. Now, a lot of this is due to the fact that the wood can swell and the windows are just old. They're just not good. But at least some of it is due to what's called a weight and pulley system. And I mentioned this yesterday, but basically what a weight and pulley system is, just like what you think it is, it's weights that go on the inside of the wall right here. So the weights would be inside of the trim. Hold on, someone's calling the office phone.
Hey, this is Andrew. Somebody's downstairs in the showroom. That was the kids.
That wouldn't be us.
Yeah. Hold on, Carl.
All right, time out 1 second. I gotta handle something real quick.
Real quick.
Well, he's almost done too, so that's fine. Take a 5-minute break. Take a quick 5-minute break. I just gotta go down and deal with something real quick. If you want to, I mean, it's only taking a couple minutes. Yeah, Andrew's gonna take over for me. If you do need a break at all, then just let Andrew know, but Andrew's gonna take over for me for a second. I'll be right back in
Fine.
less than hopefully. Because he doesn't want to deal with that. I'm sure that he doesn't want to deal with the
No, I'm saying they're
no, that's what I'm saying. I'm sure he doesn't want to deal with like he's trying to get this stuff like that.
What's up, Cooksey?
What's up, Andrew?
Hey, darn.
Chilling outside with my dog.
Where do you live?
I live like in Susquehanna.
Okay, cool. All right. So where did he leave off? Operational issues?
Yeah, he was talking about the operational issues, like pretty much how like the windows, well, wooden windows are they usually are always harder to like lift or open just because of like how they expand and contract.
Yeah. So when it comes to wood windows, right? Hold on, let me shut the door real quick. So when it comes to wood windows, obviously with the big concern, I mean, aside from the fact that most of the time when they're this old, they're going to be single pane. they're not energy efficient. But like what Paul, I think the last thing that I remember him saying was the whole rope and pulley system, right? And so because of the fact that they are going to be naturally, I mean, the last time a window that was built with like a rope and pulley system, I know that there have been some that were like, I've seen as young as like 1970s, but really nothing younger than that. They're usually from the 1930s to the 1950s. And the fact of the matter is like, at this point in time, naturally the twine or the rope, whatever it is that's used to, connect that window to that rope and pulley system and the counterbalance weights, those things are going to fail, break. And so obviously, unless you can find somebody that knows exactly how not even rope and pulley systems work, but specifically that specific window company's rope and pulley system work for that specific window, it's pretty much damn near impossible to repair effectively. So then a lot of times what people will do, you'll notice, like, say, for example, you're going up to a home. Anytime you see like blocks of wood, right? Or sometimes it's like little, they almost kind of look like they're in like a shape of a ruler or something like that. That's usually a telltale sign of the fact that the window doesn't stay open. So they'll put like those kinds of like instruments in the window to, keep it open. However, if you're pitching something like that and you see something like that, that's also a huge, it's kind of a safety concern. There's been a couple people that I've talked to that, well, one of them actually was pretty nasty. Now, again, something like this doesn't happen all the time, but there was this one individual that I was speaking to that they were telling me how their kids almost pretty much, I don't think they lost fingers, but almost did. They destroyed their hand because when they put their hand right in the windowsill, their hand knocked the block of wood out and the window just came sliding down, slamming on their hand. And there's like a 4-year-old kid's hand. And it just completely destroyed this kid's hand. So it definitely becomes a safety concern. Now, another issue that typically happens with these original wood windows. So you guys already kind of talked about like the paint peeling and stuff like that. In order to keep up with the window and maintain a window, it's an extremely tedious process. And if you really, really want to do it the right way, first you have to uninstall the window, actually take the window out of the house, sand it down. Then you're gonna have to, wipe all the dust and grime away to make sure that it's like perfectly clean, because the paint won't adhere to the wood if there's any like debris. So you have to make sure that you wipe all that down. Then you need to prime it with an oil-based primer. Then you need to put a coat of paint on. Then you got to wait for that to dry. Then you got to put another coat of paint on. Then you got to wait for that to dry. Then you got to reinstall the window. Congratulations, you just maintained one window and it took you like 6 hours to do, and you have 10 more. Right? So people don't want to do that. So what do they end up doing? Well, instead of doing it the correct way, instead of stripping all the paint off, sanding everything down, uninstalling the window, back, reinstalling the window, anything like that, what they end up doing is they just end up painting the window while it's still sitting in the house. But there's a problem with that. So not only are you not getting rid of the old gross paint that's underneath, that's inevitably, it's still chipping, right? And it's going to affect how the new paint is going to adhere to the wood. So you're going to end up having to repaint this window fairly soon anyway. But the other issue is that when you do that, when you paint the window when it's still in its in the home, what a lot of people end up doing is they wind up painting the window shut, so that window never opens again. And that also can become a security concern. I mean, like, God forbid, let's say you're hanging out in your bedroom and it's a couple of like older people in that house and a fire breaks out. Your best chance of getting out is going through the window. But now your windows are literally painted shut. How do you get out? Well, I guess your first thought would be like, well, I guess I would just have to break the window. You also have to remember this window is single paned. It's not tempered glass. There have been people, dude, I know people personally that have broken through some of these old school wood windows And because it's not tempered glass, do you know what tempered glass is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so like tempered glass is like it's the way in which we make glass today for either like windows. A big one is like for vehicles. Okay, vehicles have tempered glass. Why tempered glass is important is when it breaks, it shatters into tiny little tiny pieces, right? When glass is not tempered, it doesn't shatter into tiny pieces. It shatters in large shards. That's the difference. So that's why for safety reasons, for vehicles, for new windows and stuff like that, all the glass now is tempered glass. The old school windows are not. So when you break through, dude, I know people personally that have broken through single pane wood windows from like 1950s, 1960s, and because the window glass is not tempered glass, when it breaks into shards, and those shards wind up slicing you up. There's actually somebody that I know personally that got cut, almost died because they went through an old school glass door, and it cut up their arm so bad that they almost bled out. So that glass is no joke. That glass is no joke, right? So it becomes a huge security concern and a safety concern. Not to mention, I mean, it's kind of annoying, right? Imagine having all these windows and you can't open a damn one. You know what I mean? If you're ever like in the, me personally, I don't really like opening my windows in my home. Why? It's like I have AC and heat. I'm not gonna have that, going and open up my windows, even though my wife would love to. But for a lot of people, especially in these older homes, some of these older homes, they don't necessarily have central air or central heat, right?
Like
And
my
so a lot of times they end up opening the windows and stuff like that on cooler days to have some flow. And that makes sense. Well, imagine having all these windows that no longer, do what they're designed to do, right? And then the other thing too, when it comes to wood windows, especially with like from like the 1930s to 1950s, 60s, wood, whether it's wood doors or wood windows, they're notorious for in the summertime, they swell up. When they get swollen, it becomes very difficult to open, right? They kind of get stuck. If you've ever had like an original wood door in your home in the summertime, it gets very tight. And in the wintertime, it gets super loose and it becomes super drafty. So these windows in the summer become very difficult to operate at all. And in the wintertime, they become like, it essentially becomes like a hole in your wall. So obviously, I know about Andersen. Fibrex will not rot, and it does not need to be painted. One of the biggest benefits when it actually comes to Fibrex in terms of like the color, like me personally, the day in which I redo the outside of my home, I specifically want our Fibrex black windows because number one, they look clean as hell, super sharp. But the other benefit is this. Most window companies only give you a certain amount of colors. Like for a vinyl company, you're typically getting either white or off-white. That's it. And the reason being is that whatever color that they try to do, the sun bakes the hell out of it. It fades very quickly. The benefit with our colors here is that color is all the way through. It's not just a coating, it's not just like a top layer. It's literally that entire piece will be that color. And so even like, black, that'll soak the sun. Even with our black windows, that's going to take in more sun than any other color that we have. That black is going to be the same black the first day that we put it in as it will be 100 years from now. And so the other benefit too, that I know a lot of people, one of the reasons why a lot of people hate vinyl is the fact that it just looks like plastic, right? Because it is. It has that weird shiny look to it. Nothing else on your house in the front of your home, right, looks shiny. Doesn't look like it's, made out of plastic. And yet now you have these windows that literally look like plastic. The benefit with Fibrex is that not only does it not rot, not only does it not need to be painted, but it also gives the wonderful appearance of older wood without any of the issues, which then I kind of want to just skip to the last bullet point here, the historic value. the fact that it gives that wonderful appearance of older wood gives us the ability to say that we're actually one of the only companies recognized by the Historical Society, which is a huge, huge win, especially in the central Pennsylvania area. The reason being, man, I mean, like, like you have Hershey, right? Gettysburg, all those different areas that have a lot of historic homes. A lot of Pennsylvania, dude, has a lot of homes that were built early 1900s, late 1800s. Actually, I know like one place in particular that I'm thinking about that I ran by that was like built in like 1860 something in Gettysburg. So there's a lot of homes that when they're looking to, keep up with the home, a lot of people with older wood windows might say one of two things. Either A, they literally can't do anything, but because the Historical Society has very strict guidelines on what they can and cannot use for their home. Or you have the individuals that, they might not be involved with the Historical Society. Maybe the home's not that old yet, but their own taste, dictates that they stay in line with the whole original look of things. And so whether somebody, is being, told what can and cannot be done through the Historical Society, or they just have this, love of that like older type look, and they want to keep up with that whole look with their home and everything like that, we can accommodate anything and everything. All right. Additional window types: vinyl clad, aluminum clad, and then aluminum windows. Oi. Now, I know that Paul said something about the aluminum windows already. He said that, they pretty much suck. Obviously, if you're in San Fran, then they might be good for you out there, but not here. So vinyl clad windows, I don't know if you guys, remember this. Well, you in particular, Cooksy, but like in the beginning of the week, I had made mention of vinyl clad, aluminum clad. Now, anytime you hear the word clad, just think of the word covered, right? So when you hear vinyl clad windows, it's a wood window at its core, just wrapped in either vinyl. Vinyl clad windows, just a wood window wrapped in vinyl. And then aluminum clad is a wood window at its core, just wrapped in aluminum. Now, they're going to have very similar problems because they are very similar windows. It's at its core a wood window. The biggest difference is obviously just what it's covered with. The benefit when it comes to vinyl clad windows is this. Vinyl, you can wrap the original wood window much more tightly with vinyl than you can with aluminum. The reason being is, hold that thought. Hey, what's going on, Paul? Why? Wow. Nice. Good luck, dude. Right. Right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Pay 20. All right. Sounds good. All right. Do you think you can grab that? So, yeah, Paul's cutting trim right now because somebody came in. It's crazy. I'll tell you after. So anyway, yeah, dude, crazy. So, all right. So vinyl clad, you can wrap the wood way more tightly with the vinyl, right? There's a lot of different ways. I mean, it's like plastic, so you can kind of bend and warp and bow and shrink plastic, that vinyl, to whatever it is that you need. When it comes to aluminum, aluminum has so much of its own structure. You can only wrap that wood so tight with the metal. You know what I mean? You ever try and wrap anything with like aluminum foil? It's like, okay, I just wrapped this end and now this end pops back up. You're like, God, what is going on here? Same kind of concept, only imagine if that aluminum foil was like 10 times thicker. you're going to have to bend it in very specific spots. And it's only going to stay, you know, as tight as the original glue that's underneath it. And once that glue starts to go, it's going to lift off of that wood.
Yesterday we went over the problems. Is that the type of window where the vinyl clad windows where like you could stick the needle in it and like the wood will still come out from the sides?
Oh, you're talking about in the sill of the window?
Yeah.
Not quite, but you're on the right track. I mean, that's a vinyl clad window. That's a vinyl clad window, not aluminum clad. However, the difference with that is that's not what the part that you were looking at that they were, you know, pulling rotted wood out of, that's the sill. And the reason why that window in particular would have issues in the sill was because the bottom left and right hand corners of the sill, they back before 1996, those were original Andersons, and those original Andersons before 96, they didn't cap off the sides. And in the, like, you know, in the owner's manual, it said every couple of years, you're going to want to paint the bottom left and right hand corners with like a latex type paint. Unfortunately, nobody got the owner's manual. So nobody knew that they had to do that. And because of that, that latex paint would obviously over the years, they would degrade. That wood would become exposed. And then it would start to, you know, it would start to rot. The issue with that too is that that wooden sill kisses the structure of the home. So the longer you allow that wood to, you know, continuously rot, you're now flirting with less of a window problem and now more of a structural issue. Now, looking at this picture here, this is the benefit of a vinyl clad window. I mean, it sounds kind of weird, right? Like, oh, look how crappy this is. You can tell there's a problem here. That's the benefit. Yeah, it's kind of funny to say that, right? It sounds kind of weird, but hear me out on this. So a couple things. First, mold and oxidation commonly will form on the exterior. Little black spots of mold and chalky looking exterior. That's just what happens to vinyl. Interestingly enough, one of the big selling points for vinyl is that, yeah, vinyl does not rot. Yeah, no kidding. Wood rots, vinyl doesn't. I get that. However, here's the ironic part. Vinyl does oxidize. And oxidation is to vinyl as rot is to wood. It's like an SAT question. Oxidation is the same thing that for vinyl as rotting is to wood, because oxidation, all of that it is the degradation of that vinyl. So when the vinyl starts to degrade and starts to, you know, flake apart and wear out, that's all due to oxidation. And what you're going to start to notice, like if you ever had, you know, some of that like vinyl lawn chairs kind of stuff where you might be sitting on it and then like you put your hand on it and you get like all that white chalky stuff on your hand, that's actual vinyl, like little particles of vinyl flaking off onto your hand. So obviously you'll start having oxidation happen to the outside vinyl covering. And when that happens, the vinyl loses some of its ability to flex. It becomes way more brittle. And when it becomes brittle, it just starts to flake apart, or not flake apart, like it starts to just crack and break. Now, if you're looking at this picture, right where this big circle is, right behind it, you can see that vinyl is starting to lift up. See that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the other thing too is you can see the vinyl lifting up right here. And you can see the vinyl starting to kind of bow and lift up right down here.
And all of that, is that still considered warping?
Not necessarily, not warping in the window or in frame itself. That's just the actual vinyl covering starting to shift and lift up. So so that's just something to understand. Like, yeah, technically the vinyl piece is warping, but the window itself is not warping. It's just the covering that is. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So once that vinyl exterior starts to warp, it's going to allow the moisture to get in between the vinyl covering and the actual wood behind it. Here's the crazy part, and this is why vinyl clad in my humble opinion, is better. Because number one, it takes way longer for the vinyl covering to warp and flex and bow and lift off of the wood because it's a much tighter fit originally around the wood. So that's number one. Number two, when that vinyl covering does start to warp, you're going to very clearly see it. You'll be able to tell, like if you're looking right here, you can tell underneath the wood is compromised. The wood is no longer, pushing against the vinyl. Once the wood degrades, the vinyl isn't, being pushed out by anything. And because of that, it just starts to do whatever it wants. That's a telltale sign. Like if I'm looking at this and I see this part right here in particular, if I start to see all that kind of stuff, I know that the wood behind it is degrading. It has moisture damage at the very least. Now, when it comes to aluminum clad, again, you could see this sill was wrapped in aluminum. You can only cut and wrap aluminum so tight. Here's the bigger problem. This aluminum, before this guy peeled this part off, this piece right here, the vertical piece, looked just like this horizontal piece. The funny thing is it doesn't even look that bad. It looks fine. Doesn't look like anything's wrong. Whereas if I were to see this, I would know, okay, something's not right here.
I think yesterday, during the problems, they said something about like how the windows aren't supposed to be like screwed in on the bottom. Could that be a problem here too?
I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. Are you talking about this nail right here?
Yeah, the nails in the bottom, or like that nail right there. Could that
I mean, obviously that's going to be an entry point for moisture and everything like that. But what this guy did was, this is in particular just the framing around it. It's the same concept though. Once moisture gets in there, this wood will begin to rot. The difference though is you could see how much damage has been done here. And the reason being is that the people with this window and this frame had no idea it was going on, because to them, everything looked fine. Whereas if you're somebody with a vinyl clad window, you can see when damage is beginning underneath the actual vinyl cladding. Make sense?
Yeah, I got you. So with the metal windows, it's kind of like what you see is you just kind of seeing like the surface of everything, but you're not seeing the interior. But once like with the vinyl, whenever the interior starts to like deteriorate, you notice the exterior deteriorating too.
Exactly. Yeah, and the reason being is the aluminum, once again, because it has so much of its own structure, it's going to keep the shape that you bended it in, right? So even though that the wood behind it is gone, this is still going to keep its relative shape. Unless, of course, you're actively looking for something like this. Most of the time, you're really not going to notice.
So that's what I was about to say. In a situation like this, you probably wouldn't notice how would you like go about bringing up that problem with the metal window if you can't see it?
Well, so usually when it comes to like aluminum clad windows, you'll be able to kind of see where maybe some pieces are starting to lift off of the wood behind it, right? There's other things too, where like if you start to notice like dark spots around some of the seams where the aluminum is attached to the wood window, like base of the window, you'll start to see like some dark spots. And the reason being is because like some of that wood that's starting to flake and deteriorate, when it drains out, some of those like pieces of wood particles are going to drain out with it. So it'll leave dark spots, around the seams and stuff like that. So that'll give you a good hint. The other thing I tell people, dude, is that when you're dealing with windows like this, whether it's vinyl clad or aluminum clad, I usually kind of knock on like the sill of the window or the frames. If it's firm, like if I'm knocking and it's firm, the wood behind it is at least intact. If I'm pressing on it and it feels like it has some give, that means the wood behind it is not as strong as it should be. Make sense?
Yeah.
And then you have just, of course, your regular aluminum style windows. Aluminum style windows, they're not very common. You're not going to see them very often. And when you do, I don't care if the person that owns that house says they're the greatest windows ever, and they're just, whether they lie to you or they truly are just so, oblivious that they've never really even paid attention enough to notice any issues. Regardless, these windows are garbage. If you have aluminum windows, whether you've noticed the draft or not, doesn't matter. They need to be replaced. They're garbage. In fact, to be honest with you, man, if you have any other window that's not our window, you should probably just replace them with our window. That's really what it comes down to. But aluminum style windows, they conduct cold and hot weather, making the windows extremely inefficient. I mean, think about it, man. You're making something that is literally a conductive material. In the summertime, they're going to heat up. They're going to do the exact opposite of what you want them to do. And in the wintertime, they're going to get, they're going to soak in the cold. Exactly the exact opposite of what you want them to do. Not to mention, they're extremely heavy and difficult to operate. And then when they start to degrade, they become stuck shut. Once they start to degrade as well, once they start getting rusty and everything like that, that rust is going to discolor the surrounding home. Right? It literally looks like, if you like, imagine you went to a house. Now, obviously, the picture behind you, that's an office, that's a warehouse, right? But imagine same concept. You go to a home that has these steel type windows or aluminum type windows, and they start to degrade and start to, have like any type of like rusting issues or anything like that. Why would you want your house to look like it just had like, like irritable bowel syndrome? That's literally what this house looks like. And then obviously Fibrex doesn't oxidize. And the bigger benefit is that Fibrex mold will not grow on Fibrex. Fibrex is also, it's not a conductor, and it will remain energy efficient regardless of the weather. And then because of the installation warranty, it ensures that no issues like this can exist. Andersen Windows prides itself on its warranty.
And it is Andersen the only people that can have Fibrex, or?
Yeah, so Renewal by Andersen, we developed Fibrex. We created it. It's ours. Now there might be, other companies in the future that figure out their own type, right? Their own ways of doing things, but ours is the best on the market. And it is our, it's our property. Nobody else can use Fibrex.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just getting to the conversation part.
Want me to take over?
That's fine. I have to finish Alex's notes.
Yeah, that was crazy. It was crazy. Never cut trim before in my life. So hopefully all these trims not screwed up. I had to measure it with a 2x4, so we'll see.
Yeah, can't imagine that it went well.
Yeah, yeah. Cooksy, I never cut wood in my life. Like, you never used a saw to cut wood. And I go downstairs. Yeah, never in my life. And I go downstairs like a table saw. Never used. I mean, I've used a sawzall, but I go downstairs, and this lady needs to cancel her contract or whatever, so I take care of that. And then I this other lady's in there, and she's looking for this trim. So I call the install manager. He's like, "Oh man, I forgot to cut it. Are you afraid to use a saw?" So I'm like, "I mean, kind of, but I will if I have to." So we went and cut the lady's trim, man. You got to get stuff done. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna to go over the conversation here. I'm gonna utilize, we're gonna go through this stuff first. Then we're gonna talk about sort of what I do now, and some suggestions that I have. So it's not that this stuff is wrong. It's right. It's what we came up with years ago, though. And I do think that it's important to put things in perspective, to simplify the conversation. It does not need to be difficult. You know what I'm saying? Like, this does not need to be hard to do. You know what I'm saying? I got little wood fragments all over me, sorry. So, there's like 4 different ways to ask, you can break it down to 4 different ways. There's other questions that you can ask, but 4 different ways to bring up window questions that are like consistent where you know what you're getting. You know what I'm saying? And so, the first one is the easiest. It's just a question, how many windows do you have that are blank, right? So for example, if I go up to a customer's house and I'm like, look, we just did some work for Mrs. Jones over on 123 Main Street. The reason why I'm up here is I noticed you might be replacing your windows soon. I may be able to help now. Walking up, it looked like you had the original vinyl windows. How long have you been in the home? I've been in the home for a couple of years. Okay. Well, a lot of your neighbors have been complaining about drafts in their windows. How many windows do you have that are drafty, right? So that would be an example of the question. Okay. So there's some more examples in here. Most of your neighbors have complained about drafts. How many windows do you have like this? Older windows like this have one piece of glass protecting your home from the weather. They're called single pane windows and they're never energy efficient. How many windows do you have like this? So a good example of them starting off with a visual. So I try to start off with visual problems all the time. Because the customer can't say, no, I don't have that issue. So one example of that would be, if you take a look here, sir, the front windows of your home have issues with condensation. I have issues speaking today. Condensation every day will often cause issues with drafts. How many windows do you have like this? Okay, so again, if you take a look here, sir, the front windows of your home have issues with condensation, the fog in the glass. Condensation will often cause issues with drafts. Now, how many windows do you have like this? And then example D, rotting like this will often cause issues with operation. How many windows do you have that are hard to open and close? Okay, that makes sense? So how many is the core question? How long is the second question? How long have you been dealing with blank? How long have you been dealing with this problem? It's the same format as how many. It's just you don't want to ask the same kind of question over and over again. It's going to get dull for the customer to deal with, right? So for example, if I'm just like, how many are drafty? How many are hard to open and close? How many are not energy efficient? How many are this? How many are that? How many are hard to lock? That's not appealing to the customer. The conversation, that's what we call surveying the customer. You don't want to do that. Okay. You want to have a conversation with them. So you want to change up the questions a little bit. So I might go from how many to how long have you been dealing with blank? So most of your neighbors have been complaining about mold in the sills of their windows. How long have you had this problem? Okay. Now that's a visual issue. So you could also say, Mr. Jones, I noticed a couple of the windows right up front here have issues with mold in them. How many more, or how long have you been dealing with this? Okay. Okay. And think about it. It's interchangeable with how many windows do you have like that, right? So that's why I almost went for the how many question. It's the same thing. It's just a slightly different question to appeal more to the customer. Many people with older aluminum windows like this have issues operating their windows. How long have you had issues opening and closing your windows? I noticed walking up to your home that your windows look warped. How long have you had this issue? Okay, now getting a little bit deeper, okay, forced choice, and the way that a forced choice works is like if I give you one of two choices and I don't give you an option to answer with anything else. So a good example of this is, sir, walking up to your home, I noticed that you were experiencing issues with rotting. Rotting will cause a lot of different issues. Two of the most common are opening and closing the windows or locking the windows. What's a bigger issue for you? Okay. So again, sir, walking up to your home, I noticed that you were experiencing some issues with rotting. Rotting will cause issues, a lot of different issues. Two of the most common are opening and closing the windows and locking the windows. What's a bigger problem for you? Example B, you explain the drafts in your home, Mr. Jones. Would you say that's more of a comfortability issue or energy efficiency issue? Okay. So that's not a visual thing. The drafts are not a visual thing, obviously. Most homeowners with older vinyl windows like this have issues with drafts or a little bit of hot and cold spots. What's a bigger issue for you? And sir, walking up to your home, I noticed some gaps in the windows, which will allow for air infiltration. Do you notice more of those drafts in the front of the home or the back of the home? Okay. So that's kind of a different way to ask the forced choice. So a lot of people use this, and I do think it's a good way to be able to get out some of the problems, but I might point out an issue to the customer. Like, let's say, for example, I say, Mr. Jones, I noticed some warping in the front of your home here. How long or how do you have vinyl windows throughout the house? Right. I might ask a question like that. So the person says, yes. Okay. Are all your windows made of vinyl? Yes. Okay, sir. Every vinyl window that I've seen like this with warping has issues with drafts in them. Do you have that issue more in the front of the home or the back of the home? Okay, so that would be an example of me pointing out the problem that I see, warping, okay? And then asking the customer about drafts using the front or the back of the home, you know? And what it does is it puts the customer in a more honest place. So the customer can't just say, no, I don't have that issue, or it's not likely that they will, because I'm giving them a choice between front of the home or the back of the home. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, cool. The last way is pointing to a yes. And this is all about the language you use. It's the only thing that we use that's almost a yes or no question. Okay. It's just the way that you're enforcing the yes or no question doesn't give the option for no. So, Mr. Jones, most of your neighbors have had issues with mold in their windows. You must have the same issue, right? So the language there is pushing the customer to say, yes, I have that problem. Okay. So again, most of your neighbors have had issues with mold in their windows. You must have the same issue. Well, sir, walking up to your home, I couldn't help but notice a great deal of glass impaction, which is the warping of your glass. This has to have caused you concern. Okay, now the person might say no to that, but even if they say no, they're saying, no, I haven't seen it before, or no, I don't know what that is. And it provides me a platform to be able to go, well, sir, just to point it out to you, I noticed X, Y, and Z. Okay. All right, so I wanted to get through that because I wanted to get to what I believe is most helpful in conversation now. So for me, let me just pull up these pictures of the windows real quick. All right, when I'm having this conversation, the biggest concern that I have, okay, for people that are out there that are not that are just getting started is A, do you overcomplicate it? And B, do you ask questions too often instead of pointing out the problems? Those are the two things that you want to stay away from. Like if I go up to a customer's house and I'm like, sir, I noticed glass impaction here. That's the warping of your glass. When warping starts to happen, sir, your windows are going to start to have problems. And then they're going to get drafty. And then they're also going to get hard to open and close because of warping. So when the sun starts to warp the windows, they start to break down. The customer is going to go, what the hell are you talking about? Right. And that's going to, unfortunately, they're not going to say, hey, I have no idea what you're saying. They're just going to say no and shut the door. Right. And so what ends up happening to a lot of people when they first start is they get themselves into this really complicated position where they're doing this shit over and over again. And then what ends up happening is they can't identify that the problems are what's causing the issue. Going over the window issues the way they are is what's causing the issue. And so they never identify that. And then they just end up failing at the job because of it, because it's something that's easily fixed that they're making more difficult for themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you don't want to overcomplicate this conversation because you don't have to overcomplicate the conversation. There's no reason to overcomplicate it, right?
Yeah, you don't want to like
Yep,
pretty much like give them too much information to where they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about now.
exactly. If I walk up, let's say this is my house, right? So we went over this window yesterday. It's an Andersen window, right? I sent you this picture. It's an older Andersen casement window, okay, which means crank out window. That's in that booklet that I gave you, right? So if I walk up to this house, this is a house, let's say, and I walk up, I'm going to say, Mr. Knock, knock, knock. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Duffy. Mr. Jones. Great, Mr. Jones. I'm with Renewal by Andersen. We just did some work for your neighbor down the street, Mrs. Smith. And the reason why I'm out here is because it looked like you had the original Andersen windows here. So I wanted to stop by to see what you thought about them. Now, sir, how long have you lived in the home? Now, obviously, I changed my intro there a little bit. That's because they're Andersen windows. So don't worry too much about that. You don't have to get into that or whatever. That's what I do. I point out that I know they have Andersens because I don't want to look like an idiot if they have Andersens and I'm like, oh yeah, I noticed you need to replace your windows, right? So I point out right away, if I notice that I point out right away that they have Andersen windows and that I'm acknowledging that. So then I'll say to that person, so they say, oh yeah, I've been in the house for 5 years. Okay, so these are original windows. My guess is that they're around 40 years old. Okay. Now I wanted to point out, sir, did you notice here how you have this white powdery substance all on your windows here? Have you ever noticed that before? No, I never noticed that. Okay, so that's the breakdown of the plastic. You see, this is a vinyl clad window. So it's plastic on the outside, and that's the plastic breaking down right in front of you. Okay. Now you can see, sir, that the windows have started to warp here. If you look down towards the bottom and on the sides here, it looks like there's a big gap open for air infiltration. Now you've been here for a couple of years, so my guess is that you've experienced at least drafts here a little bit in the front of the home. Now, is that more when you get really close to the window, sir, or is that pretty much all around the house? Yeah, I mean, we haven't noticed it too much. I guess if I get real close to the window, then I feel it, but that's really it. Yeah, so that's gonna happen over time, but it's good that you don't feel it significantly. That's great. It's just gonna affect your energy bills, not your comfortability at that point. Now, sir, you probably noticed this already, I'm guessing, but if you look at your frame here, your window, there's some significant rotting starting to happen. Now, my guess is, sir, this started happening before you moved in, right? Yeah, oh yeah, that was like that when we got here. Okay, and the home inspector didn't point that out or anything? No, they didn't. Okay, so yeah, and a lot of people aren't even getting inspections anymore because home buying is crazy, but also because a lot of stuff like this does not get pointed out. It's definitely an issue, sir, and it's a really a foundational issue with the window. May I make a suggestion for you? Yeah, sure. Okay, what I do is have somebody come out to inspect this window, especially because it's an Anderson. And if they can't be a service to you, then we'll just recommend someone else who can. And then I go from there. Okay. Now there's a bunch of other problems I could go over, but at this point, I started to notice the customers' slight interest in the window problems, right? Like they're acknowledging that they have the problems. So I'm just going to transition. I see they have the issues. They know what issues they have. It's established that they're breaking down. I'm not going to go through 47 different problems, have them hate me because I'm sitting there for 40 minutes going through issues with the windows, and then I lose the appointment, right? I don't want to do that. And so this is the healthy way to be able to get over that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so we looked at some of these windows before this. I'm going to go through this window, same thing. I'm going to go through a conversation real quick. If I went up to this window, because this window is a little bit newer, okay? And it's that vinyl window we were talking about. They're replacement windows. They're definitely not originals, okay? So I knock on the customer's door. Good afternoon, my name is Paul Duffy. Are you Mr. Jones? Hi, Mr. Jones. I'm with Renewal by Anderson. We just did some work for your neighbor, Mrs. Smith, right over on 123 Main Street. The reason why I'm out here is because it looked like you had a replacement vinyl window here. Now, how long have you lived in the home, Mr. Jones? We've only been here for 6 months. Oh, wow. Well, congratulations on the new home, sir. It looks like a beautiful place. Now, my guess is, sir, because, you know, COVID and stuff like that, you bypassed inspection. Is that correct? Yeah, we didn't get an inspection done on the home. Okay, well, I wanted to point out one thing I noticed walking up, sir. It looked like the glass here was warping pretty severely, especially on the top panes of glass. You see how the reflection is all weird like that? Yeah, I hadn't really noticed it, but you know, yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, the windows seem fine, but I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, so the reason why that's going to happen is because the windows are warping pretty severely. Okay, and that's going to show up in other ways too, sir. Now, sir, if I could point your attention to the bottom of the windows here, it looks like there's some rotting going on in the sill of the window here and in the frame. Now I'm guessing that started way before you got here, right? Yeah, I guess so. I haven't noticed it. So, I mean, I definitely know it could, the wood could be done over again, but I mean, it doesn't, I didn't think it was that big of an issue. Yeah. So, well, the reason why it's an issue is because these are replacement vinyl windows and they were put into old wood frames. So what's happening is the water, sir, is getting caught inside of your window and it's transferring right to the wood, which is causing that rotting to happen. Okay. So it's definitely an issue that you're going to have over time, sir. That being said, may I make a suggestion? Okay. And then the person might say something like, yeah, you can make a suggestion, but I'm just moved in. I'm not doing the windows. Oh, no. Of course not, sir. I wouldn't expect that right now. Like you said, you just moved in. There's probably a lot of other stuff on your mind. That being said, sir, what I would do is just have somebody come out, take a look, test the energy efficiency, see where the drafts are coming from the windows. And if we can't be a service to you, that's fine. We'll just recommend someone else who can. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So simple. You just want to simplify the conversation. This is a newer Pella window. I kind of put it in there as a joke. So, oh, cool. You did order. Thank you.
I went to Petra.
Thank you very much. I like your bacon. I got bacon. Bacon, a lot of bacon. I love bacon. You like bacon, Cooksy?
Yeah, I do. What kind of bacon?
It's I don't know, it's just bacon from a diner, from Metro Diner. It looks it's like it looks okay. It looks like they undercook some, which drives me crazy, but it's decent bacon.
I like thick cut bacon.
Me too, preferably. But this will be fine. It'll do the trick. This piece is undercooked here. That's not what I like to see in my bacon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't like my bacon soggy.
What's the best bacon you ever had? From where?
I think this Costco's bacon. It was like apple smoked hickory.
Yeah, no
Thick
doubt. That's good
bacon.
stuff.
It was fire. And then
You
I had like
definitely stole a piece of my bacon out there.
candy bacon before.
Oh yeah, like from barbecue places.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. The best bacon I ever had was either in Minnesota, last time I was there at the hotel we were at. It was a really nice hotel, really good bacon. It was like melted in your mouth. It was fantastic. And then in Colorado at another hotel that was also fantastic too. But if you check out around here, Sophia's at Walden, their bacon is fantastic. Remember eating their bacon in? That's the place we went to before we went to the flea market.
Walden?
Yeah, it's like a little community in Mechanicsburg.
Oh my gosh, I love Walden. I used to do sales out there. That used to be the best place to go.
Mhm.
I used to crack it out there.
Oh yeah, it's a great place, man. What were you selling?
I sold Inspire Energy and Verizon.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
That literally was like my first week. I did like 8 sales there.
Yeah, I bet you that stuff will go well in Walden.
Their internet was terrible.
No shit. Have you ever eaten at that place in there?
No, I've eaten at the pizza shop there though.
Yeah, they just put that in a couple of years ago. How was the pizza shop there?
It was pretty good.
I'll have to check it out. I'm telling you, if you get over there though, Sunday brunch at Sophia's, it's fantastic. Absolutely great. They got these cinnamon roll pancakes, really good. If you're into that kind of thing.
Cinnamon
Alright.
roll pancakes. That sounds
Yeah,
pretty
they're really good. They got like a glazing on them. They're fantastic. All right, so let's see here. These windows we went through yesterday, they're pretty obvious the problem. So I'm gonna get onto some wood windows quick, okay? And we talked about these windows. These are Julie's windows. And you can see the problems here. I mean, rotting is obviously a very severe issue with these, okay? The paint peeling and the fact that there's lead paint on there, which you can tell by the way that that's crusting like that, like chipping off like that, that's lead paint, okay? So whenever you see paint that peels like this in like little chunks like that, where it looks like it's like bark on a tree, it almost looks like it's little chips. That's going to be a lead paint. Okay, that's the reason why it's like that. So that you can point that out to a customer. Now, rotting is a severe issue here. The fact that these are single paint. Okay, one piece of glass. Now, remember when I mentioned glazing?
Yeah.
So this is glazing right here. Okay, you see this stuff right here? It looks like it's part of the wood, but it's not. It's actually this like right here, same thing. It's this cement-like material that's holding the wood and the glass together. Okay. Now I'll find a better picture of that right here. Okay. You see how that's chipped off and you can see the wood right there?
Yeah.
Okay. And right there, that is the glazing. Okay. So that's like that, again, that cement-like material. So it chips off perfectly and you can see the wood directly underneath it, right? That's the glazing chipping off and exposing the wood underneath. That's what that is. Okay.
So the paint part would be called the glazing?
Yeah. Well, what's underneath the paint is this cement-like material. Okay. It's underneath the paint, not all around the window, but just on these pieces. So unlike windows today, each of these pieces are a separate piece of glass. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of glass just in this one window. Okay. They're held together by this wood and the glazing on top of it. Okay. So the glazing is what makes it look like it's like designed like a crowning. You know what I'm saying? So like trim almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So like right here, for example, you see how that's peeling off right there?
Yeah.
That's the glazing peeling off. The wood is underneath that glazing. Make sense?
Okay.
So for example, this right here, you see how there's like the grill pattern here?
Yeah.
Okay, that's wood, but then on top of the wood, to kind of like design it, like the wood has like some kind of like body to it, like a curve to it. That's the glazing material. It's like a cement material that's like molded to look like it's part of the wood. But when that comes off, the glass is completely exposed and you have air infiltration through it. Make sense?
Yep.
By the way, Santana, Carlos Santana, yeah, and Earth, Wind and Fire playing tonight at Hershey. I think it's like $20.
Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
I think I'm gonna go to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, it's after 11 now, so I'm gonna get off here in a second, okay? What kind of questions do you have before we get up?
Comes to the glazing,
Mhm.
that the glazing is like, you said it's a cement like material.
Yep. Yeah, picture it like clay, almost like clay, like how it's being molded to fit to the window, but it holds the glass and the wood together. It's like an adhesive, but it's designed to look like the wood.
Okay, because I got a little confused between like the lead chip paint and then the glazing. That's what I was thinking. They were kind of like similar.
Well, they do chip relatively the same. So they do chip relatively the same, but the glazing is only going to be located where the glass meets the window. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the only place that they're going to have the glazing is where the glass ends up meeting the window.
So
Does that
on the
make
corner,
sense?
stuff like that.
Yeah. So here's a good example. I'll tell you what I got. Good example. And you can find videos like this on YouTube. I'm going to pull one up real quick. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Let me share this real quick. Boom. Okay, so this guy is reglazing a window. Okay. So I don't know what that is, but he's reglazing a window. And so yeah, I think he's showing a drill bit or something like that. Man, this guy's video is terrible. All right. So right here is the glazing.
Oh, it's like that little like it's like clear putty type stuff.
Yeah, it's not clear because it shows up. It molds to the window and then they paint it. But yeah, basically you have to strip the entire window down to put it. All right, so you see what he's doing right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's that putty stuff and it hardens after it's put on. So see how he's putting it to the wood there?
Yeah.
Okay, and now he's gonna use probably some tool. I would hope he'd use some tool to make it look like it's part of the window, right? Yeah, see how he's using the knife or whatever to like mold it down.
Yeah.
So it's a long process to do this, you know?
And and the glazing's just for like installation, so like the air doesn't go through.
Yeah, it's to hold the glass onto the window. I mean, the glass would fall off the window if you didn't use it. Yeah. Now there's different tools. Some people put like designs in their glazing and stuff like that. So it looks like it's got like a bump almost. So it looks like the wood is cut that way. But when he's done and then, it hardens and then he paints the window, you wouldn't really know the difference between the wood and the glazing. Now, this guy, I don't think he's doing a fantastic job. First of all, he should tape the window off. I don't know why he didn't tape the window off because he's just going to get glazing all over the glass. And then that's going to be a pain in the ass for whoever to clean. And he's not really designing the glazing very well. It's not very straight, but either way, you can see what he's doing. He's putting the glazing into the window. He's just not doing a very good job of it. So,
Yeah, I understand now.
What's that?
Yeah, I understand the glazing now.
Okay. What other questions you have?
I don't think I got any more questions.
Okay. All right. Well, then look for Monday. Okay. practice, practice, practice. Okay, script and rebuttals are the main thing for Monday. Basic window conversation, about like vinyl windows. So if I'm pitching on Monday, then I'm focused on the words in the script. Okay. My window conversation could be as basic as, how many windows do you have here that are drafty? Okay. And how many are hard to open and close? All right. I noticed some warping here. How long would you start to notice that? Like if you were to ask those 3 questions, that's fine. You'd pass the script test because you're going to see that conversation happen a lot on the road. And that's where you're really going to pick that up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.